For those who don't know who I am an author, and have technically published a book on Amazon KDP, or Kindle Direct Publishing. It was a silly little comic that took me about 3 months to draw, and another month to figure out how to self-publish. This was just a test for me to see if I could do it and get a finished product out of it before I decided I wanted to write and publish big novels on the site. Of which I currently have yet to do, but soon. I just gotta write it first. I figured since my channel is dedicated to storytelling and story creation, I could tell you what I learned from publishing a book on KDP. Granted, this will be for publishing comics on the site rather than books and novels, but I think some of the same principles can apply. But before we get into my story of publishing on KDP, let's talk about what I'm doodling today. Today I am drawing a few things. A wizard eel, a cow made out of completely circles, and a few emoji for a Discord server that I play Dungeons and Dragons with a few friends on. A bit of an eclectic array of doodles, but I had these short drawings that simply wouldn't be very interesting to look at if I made them into their own separate videos by themselves. So we're doing this instead. This series is called Doodle Dump for a reason. You guys might recognize some of the emoji as characters that I've drawn before in the Gareth Bly journal series on my channel. If not though, and you want to learn more about these characters, you can find Gareth's journal entries describing a little about the campaign on my channel. I'm sure more journal entries will be along shortly, so consider subscribing to know when Gareth's next journal entry drops. A side note before I begin, this is not a tutorial for publishing on Amazon KDP. This is just chronicling my experience and my thoughts on the publishing service. Sorry if that wasn't what you were looking for, but there are plenty of other videos that describe it better than I can. I'll link to some below that helped me out while self-publishing my book. You're welcome. When I decided I wanted to publish a book, I was working for a print shop, getting paid exactly how you'd expect a college dropout to get paid. Actually fairly well, considering I was sitting at a desk making copies of documents. Honestly, it's one of the best jobs I've ever had. Regardless though, I wasn't exactly on track to where I wanted to be. I had dreams of publishing, and after a few attempts of submitting to agents and sometimes straight up to publishing houses, I decided I would try to self-publish. Of course, I didn't want to test the waters on my newest book. I had just barely written. No. I needed to create an entirely different project. A project that could fail if something went wrong, and I not feel bad about it. However, I was tired of writing, so I thought making a small comic book would be the way to go. I was faster at drawing than I was writing anyway, so as long as the characters and story were simple, I'd be good to go. I started doing research and learning about the ways of KDP immediately. A side note here, though, concerning the book I was trying to get published by sending it in to agents and publishing houses, it was not good. Looking back on my first novel that I had written, it was terribly, horrendously bad. It had gone through several years of editing, several iterations of my mom and grandma and friends telling me what I should do or what I shouldn't do, even though none of them had any experience in editing a book. It was bad. I'm not saying I wasn't thankful to those people, but through almost 7 years of editing this thing, it had become a muddled mess because I didn't know when to say no to an edit. It didn't read like I had wrote it anymore. What's more, I wrote this thing when I was in high school, 14 years old, so it was already rough to begin with. I've since then let go of the project and have started on other stories that hopefully don't sound as cringy as my 14-year-old writing. So, in a way, I'm so grateful that everyone rejected my terrible, awful teenage writing back then. I can do so much better now. But still, I wanted a published book, and I wanted it now, so into the rabbit hole of tutorials for KDP I went. The first thing I learned while making this project a reality was that comics are hard. It took way longer for me to draw all the pages than I thought it was going to take me. Up until then, I had drawn a few little comics and webtoon series that I chalked up to not having enough time to work on them while in high school or just starting out college. Turns out, nope. I was just burnt out on drawing the same characters over and over and over again to only get 1/1,000,000th of the story finally written down. I envy those who can draw webtoons. You certainly have more gumption than me in that area. That being said, I did manage to make this comic in about 3 months, so that's an achievement in my book. Then I came to another valuable lesson. Book size matters. As does page bleed. KDP has options for what size your book can be, and I already had drawn the pages in a 8.5 by 11 format, so I was locked into that size, and had to add bleed onto the pages I already had. Page bleed is the extra measure of an image in printing that is cut off so that you don't have those white edges on your finished piece. I knew it was a thing before, but I didn't know that you needed to consider it when publishing books with illustrations. I could have reformatted, shrunken down the pages, and compiled them back into a PDF again, but this was a test subject to me, a way to dip my toes in to see if I liked this way of publishing, and I was impatient, and I wanted a physical book of mine in my hands right then and there. So I settled for my book being a bit larger than I wanted it to be. After that, and Jimmy rigging a Word document to support my comic page layout, I was finally ready to upload it onto KDP. I made an account and filled everything out that I could. I was so excited to finally have a book of my very own making in my hands. But more hiccups came. For one, KDP said that I had formatted my book wrong. Annoyed, I fixed that, but then said my title page wasn't correct, so I had to go back and fix that as well. After formatting issues were resolved, I finally ordered my author's copy of my comic book, and it was completely black. So, I didn't know this was a thing, but when you print images that have a lot of blue and dark colors in them, or even just odd colors in them, they tend to make the drawing all muddled and gross looking, not like the pretty picture you see on the screen. Blue is honestly the worst offender, as there are millions of blues on a screen, but very few a printer can manage to print. I don't remember what the actual term for this phenomenon is, but I remember reading about it and thinking, crud. Why, crud? Because half my pages were blue and dark framed because most all of the comic takes place at night. I had a lot of editing to do on the actual pictures of the comic. But I fixed it and sent in the revised version of the PDF. Luckily, the cover looked how I wanted, and the paper inside the book was, well, the kind of quality that I expected from a print-on-demand place. Again, I wasn't going for astounding. I was going for get this project done and in my hand already. After a few weeks, my book was finally complete and up for sale on Amazon. I played around with the electronic version of the comic for Kindle readers, but Amazon was not built for that kind of nonsense. I had to download an entirely different program and was told to select and outline different frames. It was a hassle. I don't even remember if I finished making an electronic version of the comic. Anyway, I ordered a few copies for myself and family, and then it was finally completed. I had a book of my very own creation in my hands. I was so excited for people to start reading my creation. Except no one did. And I learned a very, very important lesson in publishing. Making the book is the easy part. The hard part is getting people to buy the book. I honestly didn't market it at all because I was only using it to learn about self-publishing. I'm super glad I made a small project at first because it opened up a lot for me to think about when publishing for my next projects. It also gave me a small trophy for my bookshelf, as well as an interesting conversation starter when I finally got back into college. Who can say as an undergraduate that they are a published author? Not many. But what did I think about the publishing process of Amazon KDP? Honestly, it was fun. I know I played up a lot of the mistakes I made throughout the process, but it was great to learn how to do it. It gave me the power to be able to start thinking about publishing other stories I've wanted to tell for a long time. I cannot wait till I have another book to publish on there. This time though, I'll do some marketing beforehand. And hey, for those of you still watching, I'll be sharing my author journey here on the channel more often. So if you want to see that, please subscribe and ring the bell for when I post new videos. Aside from the author journey videos, I'll be uploading more of my short stories and pieces for you to enjoy a little story from me. If you're interested in reading my little project as well, it is still up on Amazon. I'll put the link for it in the description down below. I hope to see you again. Have a great day, and write on.